Just reflecting, first of all, Big John, on the season that we've had, the year we've had. It's been a difficult year for all sports. How do you reflect, though, on how mixed martial arts as a sport has responded to the pandemic?
I would tell you that as a whole, the sport of MMA has actually, I think, become more popular. It's grown during the pandemic based upon, what the organizations, and I'm talking about a widespread of organizations. The UFC was obviously, I think, the lead one. They came out first and started doing shows, and others came in, LFA, Bellator, all of these shows came in and have done a really great job of allowing fighters, the ability to make a living. They've allowed fans the ability to kind of get away from all of the bad news at times and be able to enjoy live action sports. And I will give it to the fighters. Overall, they have put on some incredible performances during this pandemic because we've had great fights.
We asked you for your standout 5 moments from Bellator for this one, and you went straight to AJ McKee over Darrion Caldwell in Bellator 253. He remains undefeated. He's through to the final of the Grand Prix, and I suppose without that crowd, there was crystal clear composure, wasn't there, to win so quickly?
Yeah, you take a look at everything that AJ has done, and if you look at his career, because he started, his first professional fight was in Bellator. Scott Coker took a chance, by putting him in that early, but knew that, hey, the kid is special, and he has grown, he's matured, he's so much more now as a fighter. He's a complete fighter because he gets it now. He understands the entire complexity of the media and helping the promotion and what he needs to do to improve all of those things. He also understands now what's important because, you can get lost in you're not talking about me enough and things like that. AJ gets it. His performances have been incredible. He's in the featherweight Grand Prix. He had an 8-second knockout. He had a beautiful, submission against Campos. And then the submission that he pulled off against Darrion Caldwell, an ex-champion. Most people have never seen that submission before. He made it happen. He made it happen easily. He just looks fantastic right now.
Yeah, the all-round fighter, the modern MMA fighter, people are saying. How do you see him getting on in the final there, by the way? We can't look past, I suppose, the semi-final of Pitbull against Sanchez, but how do you see it playing out in the final? Do you think AJ McKee could stand a chance either way?
Oh, absolutely. There, anyone that sits there and goes, "Oh, AJ has no chance against Pitbull or he has no chance against Sanchez," they're crazy. He has proved you wrong 17 times. Let's just say that, okay? That's why he's 17-0. But you're taking a look at Pitbull. He's a different breed. Now, Sanchez has already fought Pitbull once, which I think is an advantage for him because he's learned from that experience. He understands the way Pitbull controls the fight. He understands what he needs to do to try to take that control away. So I think that's going to be a very tough fight, a very close fight. Because Sanchez has his elements that I love. Emmanuel Sanchez as a fighter. When you look at old-time boxing and you look at the great Mexican fighters that were, boxing at the time, he brings all of that same element back into MMA as a Mexican fighter. He is tough as nails. He's a junkyard dog. He's skilled incredibly with his stand-up, and his ground game is now just as good. And he brings endurance and conditioning as a weapon. And he pushes a pace that breaks people. So I think the fight that he has with Pitbull is going to be incredible. And then whoever gets past that, having to match up with AJ McKee, man, you know what? You can't ask for a better final.
No, you can't. Look forward to that. Whatever happens, it's going to be fascinating to see that play out. Now, it's interesting from the media perspective. When we interview fighters, you're never quite sure the tells. Ryan Bader spoke to us, said he felt fantastic ahead of this fight with Vadim Nemkov, but of course ended up getting stopped and lost his two-weight champion status. Was that a surprise for you, that the emphatic nature of that loss for Ryan Bader?
No, it wasn't. And it was, I actually, had talked with, people. I thought that Ryan, once he made that jump to heavyweight, I thought you need to stay there. And the reason I thought he should stay there was we have seen throughout time, everyone looks towards the really big heavyweights and the guys that are monsters. They look towards the guys that are built like Brock Lesnar. But we've seen through time that, the best heavyweights are usually the guys that don't carry as much weight. They're the faster guys, the Fedor Emeliankos, the Randy Couture's, the Cain Velasquez. Those are the guys that are usually the ones that give the other fighters the most trouble because they're faster, they're more elusive, they got better conditioning, they can go longer. So I looked at, Bader is, man, you know what? You need to think about just staying here because here you're strong. You're a big guy anyways. You're fast. You're wrestling. And wrestling is a big element when it comes to heavyweights because a lot of heavyweights don't wrestle that well. And when you wrestle as well as Bader does, it's a great advantage. So I just looked at it and I thought, well, I understand why you want to go, down to light heavyweight. But again, those guys are faster. You've been fighting guys that are a little bit slower. You have that advantage, but, Vadim Nemkov, he's the future. You're taking a look at a guy who's good everywhere and can wrestle and can submit and has great striking. So that's the way the sport is. Eventually, you're going to run into that guy that gives you trouble, and that is what happened on that night for Bader.
Yeah, great performance by Nemkov. It's interesting, though. He looks great for his future, but all round the light heavyweight division, things sometimes align, don't they? The stars align. What have you made of it? Corey Anderson has come over. Yoel Romero now, which I know you've debated with Josh Thompson on your podcast. You wanted him in Bellator very much. Yeah. How do you see that developing over the next year or so? Could there be a Grand Prix in the offing here? Rumble Johnson?
You take a look in the two weight divisions that Bellator needs to have a Grand Prix in is the light heavyweight division and the bantamweight division. It's a question for Scott Coker to go, which one is it going to be? Because it's got to be one of the two. And I look at it and say, I hope it's the light heavyweight. I don't know. But with the guys that they have recently brought in, you can take a look and say, across the board, Bill Davis and now Corey Anderson and Vadim Nemkov and all of these guys. And now you're putting Yoel Romero. They have a couple other guys they just signed that are coming from Russia that are unbelievable fighters. They are stacked in the light heavyweight division. So it would be an incredible Grand Prix if they put that together.
Yeah, Scott wants Gegard Mousasi to move up potentially, doesn't he, as well, which is an interesting
I refereed Gegard when he won the Strikeforce light heavyweight title, at a time when he said he couldn't make middleweight anymore. And he's since gone back on that word and been a great middleweight fighter for a long time, but I'd love to see him move up for that.
Let's take you to the next standout moment from Bellator. It is 244 as well. Same card, Sydney Outlaw against Adam Piccolotti. What did you make of this? Why did it stay etched in your mind, Big John?
Man, if you go back, if you love the ground game and you love transitions, this was the fight for you because Sydney Outlaw came from, his dad was a professional boxer. And he actually started, as a stand-up fighter and then became a grappler, learning through Renzo Gracie's school in New York, and he's an outstanding grappler. But going against Adam Piccolotti, another guy, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, outstanding grappler, gave Benson Henderson fits in his fight, had his back in the first round for almost the entire round. I knew that it was going to be a good matchup as far as the grappling aspect, but what occurred and the transitions that happened, my partner, Josh Thompson said, he goes, it looked like two ferrets, rolling around because he just never knew who was going to come out on top. And it was always that last element that got you there. And it was just an outstanding performance by both of those guys. And if you like the entire complexity of MMA, the stand-up along with the grappling in the ground, that fight had it.
Yeah, it certainly did, didn't it? It's interesting. Corey Anderson, when he came over, spoke to us, and he said what he welcomed about his conversations with Scott Coker was there's less emphasis on the quote-unquote rock'em sock'em sort of attitude. Do you feel that is a point that Bellator can maybe appeal to the purists with some of the ground game specialists like that?
Well, I think that, obviously everybody wants you to be exciting. I don't care what promotion is. They want to have exciting fights. But when you're allowed to come in and say, look, my specialty is getting someone to ground and taking away their tools and just putting a beating on them that starts to degrade them and break them down. That's how I fight best. Yeah. Scott Coker is going to go, well, go do it. That's the whole thing. And so when you have a, promoter and you have a boss out there that is telling you, I don't care how you fight. I just want you to fight to the best of your ability. That says everything you need to know. And that makes you feel good and say, hey, it's okay if I can use my greatest skill. You know, if I can do that, I'm going to beat everyone. It gives you confidence, and confidence is key in fighting.
Well, Big John, you're a man of many skills yourself. Fantastic commentator as well. We love you on comms with Goldie and Josh Thompson. What about your reaction when Yves Landu knocked out Terry Brazier, though? What about that one in terms of
Oh my God,
commentary, your commentary kind of archives?
that was, you know, it was funny because when, you know, I had watched Yves Landu fight, and this guy is just an athletic freak as far as balance, and he's one of those, you know, those breakdance, you know, parkour guys. He does all the crazy stuff, and he's just, you know, outstanding with his balance and his ability to do things that other guys can't. And I was just talking about, you know, one of the things that is one of the things that makes him fun to watch is also one of his worst things is he takes big risks. And sometimes those risks pay off for him, and sometimes they put him in bad positions. And I just said that, and he went for a switch flying knee and just landed it perfectly on the chin and jaw of Terry Brazier, who we know Terry Brazier, you know, was a two-time, you know, double champion in Cage Warriors, just a really good fighter. And that knockout was huge because you could see Terry Brazier had no idea it even occurred. You know, he was out for a while, and that happens with fighters. You know, it's a moment of your life that is taken away because you weren't there for it.
That was in Paris as well, wasn't it, for Yves' fight there, which is great for him. And do you feel was that important for the sport, for Bellator to get out around the world like that?
I think it was,
as well.
I think it was huge for the sport of MMA to be in Paris with, you know, guys from France that have fought their entire careers in other countries, being able to come back, you know, to where they started, to where they actually live and work out most of the time, and be able to perform even in front of some of their fans, because there was a small crowd there that they allowed in. And so I thought that was a very important thing for the sport, and it was very important for the fighters from France.
Yeah, Michael Venom Page went across the pond, the English Channel there as well, and he's hoping to get some fights back in London as this situation develops. So we look forward to that in 2021. We come right up to date with your final pick, I believe, in terms of fight. Shamil Nikayev against Kemran Lachinov at Bellator 254, and the Chechen Wolf in fine form.
I'll tell you what, I don't know how many people actually saw this fight, but I had predicted, because I had been with Nikayev in Russia and been there for his fights and watched him, and knew that, hey, this guy's really good. He's good everywhere. But if there's a guy that doesn't get credit, it's Kemran Lachinov. He's good, man. This guy is a stud. He's tough as nails on the feet. He does things that are crazy, and I would not recommend for anybody. You know, he'll throw his hands down and stick his chin out and say, "Go ahead and hit me," right? And then the guy hits him. He goes, "That's all you got," and he comes after him. It's like, it's a great highlight moment. Either way, it's going to look good if you can make it through it. It's going to look great if you get knocked out, because everyone's going to say you were crazy and you're dumb. But Lachinov is good on the ground. His leg locks are great. So I knew it was going to be a really good, you know, competitive fight. But in the end, it was that war of attrition where Nikayev went after Lachinov with everything that he had him in bad spots, you know, put a beating on him, but couldn't put him away, and exhausted himself. And then going into the third round, Lachinov knew his corner had told him, "Hey, you got to get rid of him. You got to knock him out. You got to submit him." And he went out and did everything he could to make that happen, to the point where both guys' arms are down and they're bobbing and weaving and just swinging shots. There was no defense. The defense was hit it off the top of my head instead of my jaw, but it was so fun to watch, and just an exciting fight.
Let's talk about your MVP. I wondered whether, I guess, most improved might be Aaron Pico, but in terms of most valuable, where do you go in your selection from Bellator? A lot of candidates in the mix.
Well, there are, but you got to take a look and say, you know, when you're looking at the guy that's performed probably at the best, AJ McKee. You know, 17-0, like we talked about before, 3-0 in the featherweight tournament, all finishes. You can't ask for anything more from a guy. So he's right there as far as up there. His stablemate, Joey Davis, is really turning it on. He's outstanding, and he's only getting better. And I can't wait to see what they do as far as bringing him along with the next fight, because everything is about bumping guys up, and he is due for that next level change. We'll see if he makes that level change as easily as he's done everything else.
We'll look forward to seeing them. Joey Davis is on your fighters to watch for 2021. Run us through another few names on there that we should keep an eye out in Bellator in the next 12 months.
Well, when you're looking at Bellator, you got to look towards Yaroslav Amosov. Man, the guy is just incredible. You talk about the mixed martial arts, and you talk about a guy that didn't start with any specific style. He became a mixed martial artist from the beginning. His wrestling, he has wrestled with guys that were NC2A champions, 3-time NC2A champions, guys that were, 4-time All-Americans. He can wrestle with all of them, and it's always they're trying to take him down, and they can't, and he ends up turning it around and taking them down. He's got the full game. He is so good. He's undefeated. You're going to see some records have him at 25-0, some have him at 26-0, because sometimes when you fight in Russia, they don't like to give you that fight. But I'll say he's 26-0, and that's the best record there is in MMA. If you're going to take Khabib Nurmagomedov and put him into retirement, Yaroslav Amosov's got the next best record.
And you've mentioned as well Magomedov as well.
Yeah, we were able to see him at Bellator 254. I've seen him before when he was fighting in ACB. He's the only guy that has the win over Peter Yan, who is the UFC bantamweight champion. Peter Yan came back, and I refereed the match where he actually got a win over Magomedov. But man, this guy is just incredible when it comes to the grappling. He's kind of like watching a smaller version of Nurmagomedov. He's like Velcro. You see guys doing everything they can to get him off, and they can't. His stand-up is good. His best friend growing up is Zabit, Magomed Sharapov, and they just do things a lot that are similar. But the ground game of Magomedov, he is awesome, and man, he is scary.
Lot to look forward to, John, in the next year. Just curious, you said to us you were driving from Tennessee to Connecticut for the first event at the Mohegan Sun last year.
I did.
Did you keep that up, or did you go flying?
God, no, it was too far. Yeah, that was too much driving, too many hours on the road. I stopped. I started flying.
Good man. And in terms of the next 12 months, how do you envisage it developing? Because it's a curious mix in Bellator now. We've got some big names coming in, but you've mentioned some stars at the nurturing, particularly some stars from Russia as well. Do you feel that the pot is going to continue to simmer over the next 12 months at Bellator, despite all the challenges of the coronavirus?
Yeah, I think that right now Bellator is looking as good as it's ever looked as far as the talent that they have. They've really taken it and made a clear effort to say, you know what, we're going to develop young talent like they did with AJ McKee. We're going to go after the very best talent we can as far as young fighters, guys that are just killers, guys that they don't care who you say, hey, we want to match you up with them. Good, let's do it. That's all they say. They are just killers that will take on anybody. That's what Bellator now wants to put out there, and that's the guys they've been signing.
Yeah, Big John, been a pleasure to see you in 2020. Look forward to watching you on Sky Sports, hopefully with throngs of fans around you in 2021. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Well, Merry Christmas to you, Ed. Thank you very much. I doubt there's going to be throngs of fans, and if there are, they're not going to be around me. But man, I hope you have a great holidays. Merry Christmas to everyone where you're at, and just stay safe.